Hey guys, welcome back to our restoration project. So today we're going to take on the Weber carburetors, or at least get started on it. First we'll talk a little bit about some of the carburation we have here on the bench, and basically the main goal in this video is going to be a complete teardown process on one of these 40 Weber IDA carburetors. Quite a lot involved. You got to be very careful on the dismantling process, as a lot of parts in here are very delicate and some of them very difficult to replace. So dismantling, a very important part of the reconstruction process. And then we're going to have a close-up look at this set right here. So this is going to be the actual set of carburetors we're going to use on our project here. This is a correct matching pair, correct matching numbers for model 66 year. Okay, so let's first take a look and see what came off of our project here, and what we had to work with, and what we got to do to overcome it. So the carburetor on the right here would be the correct serial number and the correct carburetor for this car. So I believe this is the carburetor that came with it from the factory. However, somewhere along the way it's lost its mate, and it ended up with this carburetor here, which would be completely incorrect. And also there's enough subtle differences between these two carburetors. You really can't run these two side by side together because you're never going to get your engine to balance out. So no way we're going to be able to get through this. Even if we rebuilt this carburetor, not going to be any way to get it to work with our engine. Basically just be wasting our time. So I have already pressed ahead and completely stripped down this carburetor just as kind of a dry run here to see what kind of tooling will be needed, and different techniques where we can dismantle a completely frozen carburetor without hurting it, without hurting any of the studs. So there's some things we can do in this video that if you have an old set of carburetors and you're worried about taking them apart, might be some things in here that will be very helpful for you on that. And this is the carburetor here we're going to take apart in this video. So probably all we're going to be able to use off of this is going to be the housing, the main housing. And the reason I want to retain that is because the actual housing on this carburetor itself is in pretty good shape, and I want to keep it for the correct serial number that's on it. And then one other note on these carburetors before we take a look at our other set. Also the intake manifolds that go with these, completely incorrect for the car. They had two different sizes that went with these carburetors. So part of the story on the car was it was in a shop being worked on, had some problems with it, was in the shop too long, so the previous owner went down with a buddy of his and pulled the car out of there because he was just tired of waiting for it. And he said after that he really never could get it to run right properly, which is what led to parking it in 1978 anyway. So that's basically one of the reasons this car never ran right, was the carburation was just a complete disaster. Okay, now let's take a look at our beautiful set of carburetors here that we're going to be restoring and putting back on our project. So the story on these carburetors, I purchased these from a vendor on eBay, and apparently he acquired these from an estate sale. He's from Santa Cruz, so some of the oxidation you see on our nickel plating there, this could be salt air that has gotten at these. They look to be fairly low mileage carburetors. The outside casing is really just in amazing condition, because typically these would oxidize quite heavily as they didn't have any kind of allodyne finish on them. They were just bare aluminum finish. But these carburetors here, complete as you can get. You have every screw, every washer that you would want to find on here. I'm just missing one set of washer and nylock on the top there. We have a little bit of a chip on the bottom of this housing here. However, this housing is going to be the one I'm going to replace with the one off the car. So we're in pretty good shape there. Not frozen. Both of them are free. Can move the butterflies, no problem. And even the oxidation on some of the screws. And look at our fuel lines here. Look at the color on that. Just amazing. The patina on there is just so cool. Looking down inside, see everything looks to be real nice condition, other than our oxidized nickel plating there. And then also the correct manifolds to go with it. You can see our date stamp on there, 66. Beautiful condition, magnesium manifolds, and we're going to take a look later, not in this video, but when we start to reassemble, I'm going to show you the differences between a 66 and a 67 manifold is there's quite a bit of difference. I have a real nice set of 67s we could use on the car. Probably be a little bit better performance. However, we're not trying to get performance out of these carburetors. We're just trying to get as historically correct as we can get it and as right as we can get it for the car. And then before we set these guys aside, let's take a look at one last thing here. So on my next video, what I want to do is I want to try and put together some kind of video on restoring these air horns. These are original nickel-plated air horns and just in beautiful condition. Most of the electroplating I've done so far has only been zinc with yellow chromate and blue chromate finish. However, I haven't done anything with nickel, so I've got a Caswell plating system coming with the nickel anodes, so it should be interesting to see how that works. Hopefully we can get these back to new condition. Also, look at the fuel screen on that. Look at the color and condition that thing's in. And looking inside our fuel fitting there. Just amazing. Just so happy that we found these for this car. Okay, so before we get started here, let's look at a couple of products here that'll be very helpful in getting your carburetor apart. So before we got started here with our teardown, we had to clean this up. It was pretty grubby, and all our linkage and hardware, nuts and bolts, all the fasteners were really just covered in just a layer of rust, and that can be detrimental to dismantling. So what I did, just basically gave it a quick gasoline scrub, followed up with a soapy water clean and cold water rinse, flash dried it, and then soaked it in a couple gallons of metal rescue for about 2 hours, and that brought it to the condition you see here. It will remove all the surface rust off your linkage, and everything else looks to be pretty good. But we're still frozen, so it didn't release the lever mechanisms in there and butterflies. And then the next most important tool we're going to need to dismantle this carburetor safely, and anything similar to it, is going to be this KB88. So if you're not able to acquire this locally, you can buy this directly from our store. It'll be under lubricants, and this product here will do things that other penetrants just are not able to do. This literally has dismantled this entire car. So far to date, I've only had one bolt break on us, and that was the front suspension. And the only reason that one broke on us is the threads were so rusted in to the seat. I don't think anything would have gotten that out, but this will do things cold that will keep you safe and keep you from harming your carburetor. Alright, let's go ahead and get started, and there really is no particular order that this has to come apart. Basically, we're going to strip the whole thing down anyways, and this is going to be the order that I found works best. And then next, using a very large, very long, this is a Klein screwdriver. And the reason I'm using this one is the tip is an exact fit on most of the hardware on here and jets. And with the extra length, you'll be able to get some torque that you won't get with a smaller screwdriver. So less harm to your jets and fasteners. So this is the accelerator pump delivery jet or valve, and this is our accelerator pump nozzle. Note the copper washer on the bottom. And then next we're going to lubricate our floats and fulcrum pins. So this obviously has been gotten into before. You can tell that by somebody has snipped the wires on the retainers here. So somebody's been playing around with that before. copper washer here also. Pretty grungy looking, but otherwise in pretty good shape. And next we're going to pull our air correction jets. And then we're going to soak our emulsion tubes and move on to other things. And then our float bowl drains. Washer on there also. And then our main jets. Next we'll remove our inspection plugs. And you can have a look down inside there. And then our air compensating adjustment screws. Idle adjustment screws and springs. And our idle jets. You can feel that one's kind of dry. Here it comes. And then next I'm going to pull the grub screws, which are the choke retaining screws. And they're wired in there, so I'm just going to undo the wiring rather than cut it. And it doesn't hurt to make a drawing to see how that was originally configured. So when you put it back in there and tighten it up, you can get back to the original tie pattern. So we're going to give our chokes a real good soaking, and our atomizers once again, and just let that do its work while we move on to the accelerator pump. So I'm removing the cam lever adjustment arm, and to me this doesn't look like this should be on this carburetor, because our early carburetors didn't have an adjustable arm on there. So that may have been something that was put on there later. I'll go ahead and remove that anyways. Cotter pin, washer, another small washer, and adjustment arm. Removing cotter pin and then the cam pivot screw. And our cam. So I'm removing the accelerator pump housing, and as I'm backing these nuts out, I think we're pulling the stud with it. So if that's the case, we want to make sure we get lubricant down in there so we don't gald our threads coming out. internal spring sits over these pegs. And we'll pull these out in just a minute. And also we want to get lubricant on our set screws, on our butterflies down there. Soak it from both sides. While that's soaking, let's see if we can get our emulsion tubes out. A stubborn one there. I'll soak that a little more. And there's two of them. Okay, we're free there. So these set screws here are kind of like pulling teeth. So what we want to do is we want to crack it, and then we want to work it back and forth as we're coming out. You can hear a crack there. So rather than just straight back it out, we want to work it. Alright, there it is. There it goes. Alright, we're completely free, no damage, and no heat required to get any of that apart. Alright, and using a block of wood or the butt of a small hammer, we're just going to tap our pre-atomizers. There we go. Well, I've just burnt through our first can completely. So one can will do one whole carburetor and partially on another. We definitely will need 2 cans to get through 2 complete teardowns. Alright, let's soak these guys really, really well. That dribble down in there. And then tap. There you go. And then also our stubborn emulsion tube responded to that tapping. And there it is. So I'm using some hardened 10.9 5mm nuts. And what I want to do is I want to thread 3 of those on there. First one till it stops. Second one down on top of it. And I want to get them on there as far as I can get them on there, but I don't want to drive this bottom one down into the thread, so we want to hold that one tight while we cinch down the others. So we're going to tighten these up fairly tight. Okay, and then the trick is not to try and back the stud out. The trick is really to drive it further down in first and then back it out. What's going to happen if we try to pull it out first, all these are going to spin loose and we're not going to get anywhere. There it is. And then we're going to just rock it back and forth. These will loosen up, but you'll have to retighten. Okay, you can see it starting to go now. Just got to be real patient with it. back and forth, retighten your nuts, back and forth, retighten your nuts, and once it starts to go, you're in good shape. Alright, there it is. Threads are perfectly clean, no heat applied. About 15 minutes per stud. You really got to just baby these things along. I'm going to go ahead and pull the rest of these, and then we'll have a go at the top covers. That's down here. These are 4mm. Alright, so we got all our studs out of there successfully. Now we need to just drill out our float pool vents. How we're going to do that. Here's one that I've already moved off the other carburetor. So I'm just going to take a drill bit and relieve out this flared edge. So you can see the edge in here is flared. I'm not going to do that in here because I don't want any metal shavings in with the car here. And it's about 115 degrees outside. So let me take this outside. We're just going to drill that off, pop those out of there, and then other thing I'm going to do on a vise, I'm going to drift this pin out. It's splined in here. We're going to push it out here from this side. Let me go do those things. We'll bring them back in and have a look. So using an old drill bit to drift out from this side, and that seemed to come right out no problem. That's the splined edge there. Okay guys, so there you go. There's a complete teardown on a Weber 40IDA carburetor. All the studs fully extracted, safe, and no damage. So from here, I'm going to clean everything up, take inventory. We're going to refinish parts that we can reuse, make a new shopping list for parts we'll need to replace. Also, we're going to strip down the other carburetors and catch them up to the same stage here. On a future video, when we rebuild these carburetors, I'll go through everything at that time when we reassemble and explain what everything is, how it works, so when you get into your Weber carburetors and do the rebuild, you'll have a complete understanding of how everything works and won't have any problem at all. Well, thanks for watching, be safe, and we'll see you on the next video.